All right. So I think this is the 10th video here in the historical bike build series. And in that opening picture, you saw the original sprocket that came with this bicycle that was found on the side of the road. And this is the internal part of the crank. And you see that it was all just cast or forged out of one piece of steel and then bent to make the cranks that the pedals attach to. So the problem is that on these four-stroke bikes, the four-stroke engine is quite a bit bigger than like the two-stroke engine, and certainly much bigger than having no engine at all. So you got to make room in order to have the pedals, be able to crank and get past either side of the engine, that sticks up when you're pedaling. Otherwise, you'll just crank, I don't know, 10, 12 inches, and then it'll hit some part of the engine on either side. So that's no good. But in these kits for the four-stroke engines, they give you extended crank pedals. Unfortunately, though, they're kind of a universal fit, and you saw that in the black crank there with the pedal, and then the other arm there that's black. It has a square fitting in there, and I do not have an attachment on this very old bike that would fit those kind of universal mounts that I think are common with newer bikes. So, what is this quote-unquote universal, crank extender or crank adapter unit here? It didn't fit. So what I was forced to do is I had to cut the original crank that came with this bike and then square off the round ends there in order to fit into the cranks there. And let me tell you, that was quite a job, because you got to make sure these things are square, and then they're offset too. So like on one side of the bike, the pedal's high, and then on the opposite side is low. And then when you pedal it, just kind of reverses itself, so they're not, both high at the same time, So you can kind of see here, I got one done already, and the process in this video is showing how I did the other. I just chopped off the original parts that were bent up to the pedals to length. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grind down each side of the internal part of this crank, which I need. I got to have this because that's the part that fits the internal mechanisms, the bearings that go inside the housing there for the pedal assembly, as well as all of the, bolts and stuff and washers that, keep it from just falling apart. So the whole assemblage really is geared on this thing. They do sell an aftermarket, internal crank assembly here that will fit these universal, bike extender cranks or other cranks. I guess if you just wanted to get aftermarket cranks for some reason, or aftermarket pedals, I guess like if you're really into, performance biking and, I don't know, maybe triathlons or just, competitive bicycling, I guess you can pretty much buy aftermarket anything. So they do make an adapter and sell it online. It's only about $20, but I didn't want to wait, to order that and have it ship over and stuff like that. And maybe it would fit or maybe it wouldn't fit, because again, this bicycle is from, 45-ish years ago. And who knows if a little measurement would have been off here or there. So I had this part, I couldn't use it anyway, and on top of that, the cog right there was way too big from the existing beach cruiser bike. I had to lower the engine, and the cog that the chain goes on the original was just too big. It would have hit the engine, so I got to lower that engine even lower so it doesn't hit the gas tank. So I got to make it out of this stuff. So what I'm doing here is I'm just using the Dremel because I got to drill this out in here in order to do some tap and die. Because the way that these universal cranks go together is there's just a female port right on each side of the crank there, and you just fit it over the square tube, which should be there, but again isn't because my bike is so old. Mine's round instead of square, and then you bolt it in. So I got a few things going on here. My crank was just all one piece, and it was probably heated and bent into position. The second thing going on is that the actual cog itself was way too big. So even if I could get this thing to fit, the cog would have been too big, and the chain would have rubbed up against the bottom of the engine. So I had to go with these extenders, and I had to make this thing fit. So I broke out the grinder, cut it down, cut it to fit, squared off the edges, drilled in the ends here, and then just doing some tapping here, and to make some thread, because we got to put a bolt in there with a washer to make sure that when you put these crank extenders on, the pedal extender cranks, that it's not going to fall off. So they're just kind of friction fit for the time being, and then you put a bolt in with a washer to make sure they don't fly off. So I think I did the best I could. It's off just a little bit, so when you pedal, there's a tiny bit of a wobble where the chain goes on, just because I had to grind down a square fitting on this internal crank assembly on the inside of there, and the squares are just a little bit off. I was kind of eyeballing it, as opposed to using like a micrometer or some other kind of fitting or something. So I'm getting pretty close to done right here in the video. I already did the other side, and I'm showing how I cut down, squared it off, and now there's a little dry fit right now, and that's where you put the bolt. So going to take it over, and you can see this opening right here where the crank assembly goes. I don't know if you can tell or not, but this thing is really big. And I have several other scrap bikes here I was hoping maybe to pirate some parts off of, but none of them fit. I mean, this thing is really, the diameter on here is the largest one out of the whole collection here. So I think 45-ish years ago, at least on this model, they just made the diameter of these openings much larger maybe than they needed to, or at least larger than the current kind of generally accepted openings do right now in present time. So overall, I'm really pleased. You can see now that the pedal cranks are on there. There's the original. Look how big that thing is compared to the one that is a replacement. And that black horizontal piece right there, right above the crank assembly, that's the motor mount. So, and that's too high. So if I have that there, the motor or the engine wouldn't fit. It would hit the bottom of the tank that I'm building, because it hangs down. So I had to, for a number of different reasons, go through this laborious process to do this. But you know what? I really didn't mind. I mean, that's part of it. I enjoy kind of like just making stuff work, and making it to fit, so to speak, rather than just going out and buying the pieces, parts, and adapters and stuff that somebody else did. I mean, the whole point of this is that this is my project, not somebody else's project in a factory somewhere. So I'm not opposed to using other parts from other people if I have to, but in this case I had the crank assembly there, so really it was just my labor and, I don't know, one of the grinding discs really, and this is another chance to kind of improve the skills just a little bit. So what I'm doing now is I got the crank in, and I'm putting in some pedals, and I really like these pedals. These are actually metal pedals as opposed to like the plastic ones that kind of come with the modern bikes. So I like the fact that these are metal. They had some reflectors on them. I just popped off the reflectors But these things were toast. I snagged them off of a old 10-speed that had been sitting around for a long, long time, and they were kind of rusty. But I just shot them with some black spray paint, and I think I'm gonna have a little clip of that. And it's just, clean them up, get some of that rust off there, and shoot them with the spray paint. And it's really kind of a miracle to see how they can turn around and look really acceptable. And keep in mind that this bike is supposed to be a historical like inspired bike. So if there's a few dings or dents or a little bit of rust on the metal, that's okay. I mean, it almost adds like an era of authenticity to it. So hey, there you go again. See how that's showing right there where the bottom of the engine would have hit that sprocket, the cog right there. And all's well. I got that engine lowered, got the cranks on there, and didn't have to send any money off to Amazon. So hey, hit like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Have a great night.